Hey friends, welcome into Undercurrents. Today on the podcast, it's slightly different because I am here alone for a solo episode, and I'm looking forward to this. I think the cadence moving forward for me is going to be 3 episodes where they're the full-length conversation. So if you've been following the show since the start this last month, we had the conversation with Dr. Tommy White Bryan, then Tim Whitaker last week, Sarah Barlow. Thank you to the 3 of them for being the first 3 episodes of the show. Today, it'll be just me going over some things, and then we'll jump back into the full-length conversations. I like that because there's other stuff I want to talk about and topics I want to bring up, and we can play with formats a little bit when there's a week in here where I can bring an idea or even talk about some of the feedback and conversations I've landed in because of these episodes. I want to begin actually with the biggest inner battle that I've had since starting Undercurrents. Sarah, funny enough, touched on it at the beginning of last week's episode with this idea that content and starting to produce things, end up in conversations, feel like a teacher. That can start to change, like, actually doing the work. So you start talking about integrating instead of actually integrating things into your life. And I felt this at different times in my life. I would say the biggest time I felt it is when I was working in church and there was always a Sunday coming, right? So in the same way with Undercurrents right now, we release these episodes every Tuesday. So every Tuesday, there's a podcast coming that I need to have a conversation for. I have to have questions prepped for, the editing process, all the things. This is a solo little venture right now. So I don't want it to become something where I get in the routine of producing and not taking what I'm hearing and sitting with it, or even practices like a meditation, working out, things that have been really healthy for me. How do I continue in those things instead of just starting to talk about some of the benefits I've seen from them? And it's funny too, because 2 months ago when I recorded, or maybe it was a month and a half ago, with Tommy, that episode is before I'm in production mode. And I'm like, okay, it's cool to hear the way that I, approached that conversation, and I will, with that vulnerability and authenticity moving forward. But when you don't have the every Tuesday thing in your brain, it's just different. So that's the biggest inner battle for me right now is don't just talk about it, be about it and live into it. So let's read some comments here. I have my phone. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see, I won't say names here, getting phone calls and texts about, I don't see things quite this way, but it's been really helpful for me to continue my thinking. Like, that's been my favorite part of the show so far. So I took screenshots. I'll just read through a few at random. I really related to the values portion. This goes back to the conversation with Tommy. There was a wealth class that I took recently. A whole portion of it was focused on establishing our values and then applying them to how we spend our money. Value-based spending is what they called it. Inspired me to dig that up and see what I wrote down to see if they're still relevant. Here's another one. Honestly, it's really cool to look over on the internet and see you in these spaces. This was after Tim's episode, in just referencing like some deconstruction, what's happening in the church right now. And she goes, I'm like, yeah, dude, me too. It's hard to walk, but wow, is it better than some of the places that we were? I hope the podcast goes really well for you. Another one. I'm almost done listening to the first episode. I started crying this morning while I was listening on my way to work. The last few years have been a wild ride. It's a scary thing to let go, but it has been so beautiful. The joy and the pain dance together hand in hand. Cheers to being curious and doing scary shit. I like that a lot. Another one. Finished listening to your interview with Tim this morning. When you started the podcast, I was wondering if you were going to have him on the show because I see you liking his posts, probably on Instagram. I really enjoyed the episode. Appreciate you sharing the journey and holding space for people in so many different places. I want to highlight that for a second because I want you to know that even if we don't agree on everything, you are 100% welcome here. Not every episode that comes out, you're probably not even going to agree with, but it might not even interest you because I'm following certain things that are just, oh, this sounds interesting to me. Let's see where it leads. And that's absolutely fine. Again, it's a growth mechanism for all of us if you want to stay. And I am trying to hold space for a bunch of different worldviews here because I love all of you. And I know that it's complicated. And I know that it's easy to get our head down in the way that we think and like make that the waters we swim in. So if you want to stick around and you have a different view than me, you are more than welcome. Another one here. I'm so proud of what you're doing with Undercurrents. It'll be awesome to listen to the things you talk about and the realness and the raw that I feel like we didn't get when you did Trailblazer because you look at things so differently than you're used to. I feel that way. I'm glad I did the Trailhead podcast 5 whatever years ago it was now, but this feels so different because I'll talk about this later, but I'm not hiding anything. And not that I was like hiding some moral failing or anything like that, but I felt more intentionally manicured. Like there was these things that were off limits and I was trying to appeal to one specific group of people and make sure that I stayed theologically correct and all the things. And I don't have that pressure anymore. So it changes the way I look at what we're creating with Undercurrents. Another one, finished the episode today. Great convo. Really like the timeouts that you take. They're timely and help dive deeper into the things that maybe even the conversation would dive deeper into things that maybe even the conversation would allow. I've heard good things about the timeouts, so we'll keep those coming. Had one where just someone really liked the line from one of the episodes. If you haven't seen the complexity of something yet, you probably shouldn't have a loud opinion on it. I continue to think about that. The last one I want to read here is I've been asking people for topics and people. And if you have a topic that you'd want us to bring up on the podcast, someone that could speak to it, then let me know. But I really liked this and talked to Sydney about it too, because I just think you'll probably resonate with how this is written. So this is a topic that we should explore in the future. Something I've been struggling with, he writes, who can we really trust and what makes organizations trustworthy? We've all come from different backgrounds. We have rejected or fallen away from typically due to some faults of breakdown within the organization. Goes on, I'm starting to see patterns now in life where no organization really has its shit together, so to speak. So how do we know who to trust and who won't burn us in the end? This applies to politics, spirituality, and even local organizations. I'm starting to not expect much from people or organizations, and I can admit it's probably not a good long-term approach. I'm there. I do think we've got to figure out a way to get back to operating from a place of good faith. And there's also some differences at play when I would say person to person versus person in a power structure, person in an organization. And I don't have a good answer for this. I'm finding myself wanting to lean into, hey, on a personal level, I'm going to operate in good faith. If you have a different worldview than me, I'm going to anticipate that you want the best for the world. And that's how you see it. And you're arguing for your viewpoints. Even if we don't agree, people have bad ideas all the time, but we can come with good faith going, hey, we probably both want to create a better world. And then with that good faith, that at least allows for better conversation than if you think that my intention is to burn it all down. I just don't think that that's the majority of people. And so good faith is something that I hope we can explore in greater ways. And then, yes, there's a ton of complexity. And I love that he brought that up. There's so much complexity when it gets into organizations, because even well-intentioned people, once they get into a system and power is at play and livelihood and finance and all the things, it just skyrockets the complexity. So we'll talk on that. And I got other text messages with topic ideas and things that I have a running list. So you are heard when you make a suggestion, and I need them. I do not want this to be just me informing where the thing goes. So that's some of the comments. Let me give you some of the main takeaways from the last month. First one is this. I really appreciate that everyone has different ways of attacking core values. You had Tommy, who literally teaches people that core values are the first step. That's a good starting place to what are the things that matter most to me. You had Tim coming at it from this perspective of, hey, like it was modeled by my dad, just the kind of no BS that we live honestly. And then he didn't really necessarily think of it that much more. And then you had Sarah, who she would say, I feel like it's just, there's a Sarah I know I need to live into and my most authentic version of myself. And then there's things that get in the way. And like, I'm just trying to remove those things. And so she's like, I don't really think about it in the realm of values. And then there's me, and they've just identifying them and going, are these things that you say that matter to you actually showing up in your life? That exercise has been one that I've told other people, hey, if you ever want to try it, like definitely has been good for me. And I'm still on a journey because there's ways where I'm like, how do I actually integrate this? It's also led to a hypothesis, an idea that I want to give away in this episode. And just for the next few minutes, I want to talk about. The more that I've had these talks. In fact, I did a book club with some friends a couple months ago. We read Atomic Habits, and all four of the guys in that group, myself included, we wrote out our values. We talked about them because that's part of the beginning of the book, Atomic Habits. So that was maybe the first time in a group setting I had really kind of talked about, hey, I've been exploring this values, writing my eulogy, whatever, for the last year, maybe year and a half plus. And then in that group setting, we're talking about it more. So it's getting me thinking. And I'll just lay it out really simply. I think everyone has to share one common value before you can put anything on top of it. And the baseline where we all have to come from is integrity. It all has to come from a level of self-awareness and honesty. And when I say the word integrity, it probably brings up a lot of different perspectives in different people's heads. And I don't know what you think of. So I will just put it in image form because my brain thinks in images. Just think about the foundation of a building. And if that foundation lacks integrity, the whole thing kind of flops and doesn't work. And so when it comes to values, we have to be to the best of our ability, right? We all have blind spots. But we got to be honest with ourselves about where we're actually at and how our ego might get in the way. How our ego might tell us, hey, this is something that matters to you, but it maybe only matters to you because you want other people to see it matter to you. I do that all the time. I make decisions based on how I would be perceived about that thing rather than really coming at it from a place of authenticity. And so the more I've thought about it, if there's not a level of integrity first, where I want to live in this moment, honest to what's happening in my heart, honest to the things that I'm experiencing, understanding like the emotion that's in me, my past history, what I hope for my future, but doing all of that, even like my core fears, if there's things that I'm not admitting, not talking about, whether that's to myself, to those that are closest to me, it's going to be really hard to build on top of that. Honesty has to be the first thing. In Tommy's model, she said pick 5, which I think 5 is actually quite a lot. I might even say 3 or 4, but I would say non-negotiable. Number 1, put integrity in your core values. This is the first time you ever did the exercise, you're like, what matters most to me? I'm going to boil it down. Make one of the 5 integrity. Make one of the 5 honesty, because you have to live into that first before any of the other stuff matters. And that actually goes to something I've been thinking about with church. Depending on when spirituality hits you, it could be a way of performing a mask that you wear, or it could be a very authentic expression of something that's happening internally. It's not either or, it's both and. Sometimes spirituality hits someone in a season where they absolutely need it and they're coming at it from this just raw, open awareness. And man, like it resonates. Why? Because it's honest. It's coming from a very true place, a place of integrity. For other people, you've hid in church. You've been in a space, and this was myself included. I found ways to be shinier, to perform, to be a professional Christian. And the best thing for my spiritual development was leaving. It was being honest and putting integrity, up there on the list, coming clean on even how I'm thinking about stuff, going, this is a little scary, but this has been the road that I've been walking. And that integrity piece is what brought the breakthrough. It's what brought the freedom. Is I'm going to be true to what's happening here. And I need to talk about what I'm feeling. And so again, I think integrity is the non-negotiable first core value that we have to live from. And then from there, we probably will all have slightly different things. Just a hypothesis. I don't know. I would love your thoughts on that. But because core values have been obviously a key part of these first few episodes and something that mattered to me a lot, now I think that's part of what I would not advise. I'm not coming at it from that perspective, but just put it in your top 5. I would vote to make it one of your initial values, live into it. And then over time, if you feel like you do that well, you put another word in there. All right. Here is my big thought for this week's episode. That idea actually comes from a Donald Miller business book, which is so funny because I didn't even make it all the way through the book, but I was rereading this first section, and there's one line that flows really well from the honesty, integrity conversation into this. But the line is this: choose not to be confused. Choose not to be confused. How many people do you know that you admire that are constantly confused? How many times does you saying, I don't know, get you out of making a decision where you actually kind of do know what you need to do, but you leave it at, I don't know? I'm bringing this up because it resonates very deeply with me. There are plenty of times where I know the thing I should do, know the thing I want to do, know the thing I need to do, but I act from a place of, I don't know. And you know what that does? It disconnects you from your heart. I feel this on a deep level because in middle school, I used to always tell my parents when I'd get home from school, they'd ask, how was your day? And I would say, I don't know. I did know, but I was being one way at school with school friends. And that wouldn't have been applauded at home with my parents because I was trying to fit in both spaces. And so I left it at, I don't know. That multiplied over time. And for me, as an Enneagram 3, not great at connecting with my heart. I will say things are changing. I love emotion. I love figuring out how I feel about things now. But where that comes from is summed up so well in that line: choose not to be confused. Just make a decision and roll with it. It makes you more present. You just go, okay, I'm going to decide right now. I'm going to say or at least try to explain what I feel, rather than being unsure. And for some people, you know exactly how you feel. Maybe you're great at explaining those things. I have friends like that. I love you for it. For me, I can often hide and try to almost keep the peace in a way by not fully saying where I'm coming from. And so what the invitation is when I say choose not to be confused is for me to just go, well, let me explore it a little bit more. Instead of dismissing it and acting like I'm unsure, try to put some adjectives out there. Try to explain, and then go from there. So the line: choose not to be confused. That's the one-liner for today. 3 questions before we start to wrap up. Number 1, from this last month, I got the question: is Benji new age now? And it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh because I have so much negative connotation around what new age means from my childhood and just from people I was around. So no, I don't classify myself as new age. I am far more open to ideas than I have ever been. I love talking about spirituality and religion and philosophy, but I do not feel a need to categorize myself. And when I think of New Age, I start to think of lots of things that I don't think I am. So it's okay. And if you're there, awesome. Stay in this. And I would love to chat with you more and learn a lot of things from people that others classify as New Age. So I don't know what that says about me, but just finished reading A New Earth from Eckhart Tolle. Highly suggest it. He gets thrown in that category from time to time. But again, no, I don't think I would categorize myself that way. Second question, what's the point of this podcast? Where do you see it going? Great question. It's being built as we go, and I like that, and I'm cool with that. It feels like the main things that I care about are how we continue to foster good virtues and values in our lives. I care about spirituality, the development of the church. For me, the priority right now is to have really compelling conversations consistently, to then notice why I feel certain conversations resonate, and then go, let's try to lean into that. And I haven't had enough of these conversations yet to lock in and say, this is absolutely what the point of Undercurrents is moving forward. All right. The last thing is more of a question. So I don't know why I don't really have 3 questions I'm answering. I answered 2 questions that I got recurringly, and then I have one that I want to pose at you. And the question is, do you want or need help identifying your core values? And if so, please reach out. The way that I think about core values is you get down to those 4 or 5, you put them in a few places. The main one for me was my journal. I actually want to get some printed for my office in here, so I see those words consistently. And then you just set up some sort of routine weekly or monthly where you check in with yourself and go, is this how I'm living in the world? And what are ways that I can make these values more present in my day-to-day life? So don't overcomplicate it. But if it's something that you're interested in and you want to chat, then please feel free to reach out. Okay. I have a song lyric for you as we wrap up today. The song lyric is from Audrey Assad in a song called Evergreen. But she has this lyric that I think is really good coming out of the last 3 episodes. And just if you're in a space of personal evolution and questioning and wondering and somewhere in between like where you once were and no belief and some belief and what the hell is going on. The line that stuck with me that I've written now in several places, she sings this. She says, out past the fear, doubt becomes wonder. Out past the fear, doubt becomes wonder. And I just think that line is so good. There's so many things we're afraid of. We talked about this in each story over the last month. Some moment happens in your life and it causes fear in you. Maybe your friend circle changes, the city you live in. Maybe you get a health diagnosis. Maybe your church no longer accepts you. And once you get through that initial fear, the initial conversations, the big change happens and all this doubt comes in. But then, and it's perfect. This is a perfect line for spring. I'm in my neighborhood right now. I just took my dog on a walk right before I recorded this. And spring is blooming. Plants that just sticks, they now got green on them. A tree across the street that I hadn't seen in full bloom yet. It has these amazing flowers. So out past the fear, doubt becomes wonder. We're in the spring season. I feel this in me. Doubt slowly turning into, whoa. Doubt can have all these negative connotations, but also when you live in that space, everything around you becomes new again. You see the world with fresh eyes and you just go, man, it's beautiful here. People are beautiful. We're complex. We're messed up. We fight about stuff that seems sometimes so small, minuscule, irrelevant, unknowable. But hey, also, once you get through the fear, you sense all this doubt, it also slowly, weirdly morphs and turns and becomes wonder. So Audrey Assad, thank you for that line. The song is evergreen if you want to go check it out. That's it for this episode of Undercurrents. Again, if you have a topic or a question, a comment, I'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back next week with another full conversation. Cheers.